Thank you very much for being here. I'm very excited to be here. I'm told one of the constructive criticisms I often get for my talks is that I talk very fast, so I apologize in advance if I do that. I think a couple of the reasons that I do talk fast is that there's a lot of ground to cover in a small period of time. I'm also very passionate and very excited about this stuff. I think it's a message that really needs to get out, whether you're currently using tobacco or someone you know and love is using tobacco. I think some of the tools and the skills that you'll pick up today will prove it immeasurably helpful for you. So I'm a huge fan of it. My background, essentially, so you know who it is that's talking to you, I have a PhD in clinical health psychology, and all of my research while I was in graduate school, and since was on tobacco. So my master's and dissertation, primarily I worked with the military, and I have a close working relationship with the Department of Defense, and because those men and women, as I'm sure you know, they actually have prevalence and incidence rates that are continuing to go up, and among 18 to 25-year-olds in the military, their prevalence rates are about 50%. So there are certain populations that certainly have more of a need than others, but anyone that smokes, you know, this is great information for them. So I really want you to think differently about quitting, so that after you're done listening to this talk today, you'll think differently about quitting than any other time that you've quit in the past. It's sad but true. I am also a former smoker, but I've worked on numerous community-wide tobacco control campaigns. I've worked with countless individuals one-on-one, helping them quit smoking. And currently I do go around. Pfizer does cover, for full disclosure, Pfizer does cover my daily expenses while I'm away from home. So they're helping me be here today and get this message out. So these are a few of the things that we'll talk about in the next hour. We're going to talk about what you're up against. I'm going to talk about why smoking is a two-part challenge, both physical and behavioral. I'm also going to talk about knowing what your options are. I'll talk about all the 7 current FDA-approved treatments for smoking cessation and how to use them, and I'll also talk about knowing how to get started. Part of the knowing how to get started are these cards that are in the blue packets in front of you, and a little later in the talk we'll kind of dive into those, but I think that they're absolutely great. It's not just the clinical psychologist part of me saying that, but basically by working your way through those cards, what you're going to do is create a personalized and individualized behavior modification plan for yourself, and I'm a huge, huge fan of it. We'll also hear from Donna over here, who's a former smoker who quit with the help of treatment and support, and it will be followed by a brief question and answer session. I do want to say, you know, having been a student for what seems my entire life also, I really want to encourage you, if you have any questions while I'm talking, go ahead and just raise your hand or shout out your questions. If it's something that I can't answer quickly, I'll ask that we save it till the end, and I'll talk about it at the end, or stick around and talk with you one-on-one. But if you have questions that come up, it really is important to me that you feel like you got something out of being here today. So please don't hesitate to go ahead and shout out your question or raise your hand. So it's not just about why you're quitting, it's how. If I do my job today, I'm going to do 2 very important things. Again, tell you how quitting can be different this next time that you go to quit, and then how to take those first steps to quitting. All throughout time, people have had their doubts about being able to break their addiction to tobacco. Here's a famous quote: "Quitting smoking is easy, I've done it 1,000 times." You know, Mark Twain. I think anyone that's ever struggled with their tobacco use can relate to that quote. Here's another quote: "I tried to quit 9 times, but each time I started smoking again." And that was from Donna here, who we'll hear from in just a little bit. Now, you probably already know why you should quit. I certainly knew some of the reasons why I should quit. Sure, there was all the health reasons and all I felt socially ostracized and those sorts of things. But when I started graduate school and I was still smoking and I entered a smoking cessation research lab, I could have been fired on principle alone. And I told myself, well, this is an easy decision. I'm just going to go ahead and quit smoking, because this would be very humiliating to be, you know, if my major professor saw me smoking, and you know, and all the horrible things that would go along with that. And it was a struggle for me. I couldn't just quit right away. And so I have a lot of empathy for other individuals going through the tobacco cessation process. But if I could pick just one word why smoking is so difficult to quit, it's nicotine. Nicotine's a drug that's found naturally in tobacco, and over time, as a person smokes, he or she may become physically dependent on nicotine. Those who know will tell you that nicotine is just as, if not more addictive than heroin or cocaine. And while we all know that there are thousands of chemicals in cigarettes and numerous carcinogens, one of the reasons why many of us continue to smoke is because of this physical addiction to nicotine. So despite what many non-smokers believe, you know, for those of us who are smokers, it's not just really a bad habit that we're choosing to maintain, or a lifestyle choice that we're choosing to live. For many of us, it's a recurring chronic condition that requires both treatment and support. So you're going to hear me harp a lot today on getting the right treatment and getting the right support to help you break the tobacco addiction. Just to briefly talk about nicotine, essentially what you're doing when you smoke a cigarette is you're freebasing nicotine. That's why it's able to get into your brain so quickly. Nicotine goes from a cigarette into your brain in just about 10 to 20 seconds. So it's an extremely, extremely fast drug delivery device, the cigarette. Nicotine attaches to nicotine receptors in your brain, and that sends a message to release a chemical called dopamine. I'm sure we're all familiar with dopamine. It's the feel-good chemical in your brain, so whenever you're doing something that makes you feel, it's pleasurable, you're getting the dopamine cascade. But that doesn't last long, that dopamine feeling, that feeling good feeling. And so you start to crave another cigarette. And we all know what those cravings are like. We all know what those nicotine withdrawal symptoms are like. I think one of the universal ones, no matter who you are, if you're a smoker and you're going through withdrawal, is irritability. I think a lot of us can relate to a smoker being irritable when they haven't had a cigarette in a while. Decreased attention span, increased restlessness, increased cravings, increased appetite, insomnia for some of us. And many of us will experience multiple of those, 4 or more withdrawal symptoms from tobacco. And so it's a cycle of addiction. You have the withdrawal symptoms, and then you'll dose yourself, and then you'll feel good for a while, and then you'll have the withdrawal symptoms again. It's a classic cycle of addiction. Yes, ma'am.
What does the increased appetite mean, or what's behind it neurochemically?
Well, one of the things that obviously the cigarettes, the tobacco acts on dopamine. And so when we're eating foods, especially fattier foods that are not so healthy for us, it's similarly acting on the dopamine, the pleasure and reward system in your brain. And so it's helping you feel good. It's taking the place of what the cigarettes were doing before. And that's why later on I'll talk about having healthier foods around because many of us unknowingly will reach for those fatty foods because we're trying to get that same dopamine, that same pleasurable feeling that the cigarettes used to give to us. Sure. That's a great question. And one of the things I want to point out too is, think about what many people do in this day and age when they go to have a cigarette. Number one, they stand up from their desk or their workstation, their patient area, whatever it is that's giving them the stress of the moment. They get up and they go outside. They take deep breaths, and they're usually socializing with their peers, with their friends, coworkers, letting their hair down out in the smoking pit. I want to point out to you that all 4 of those things, getting up and walking away from your workstation, taking deep breaths, going outside, socializing, those are all things that we as clinical psychologists do that we recommend individuals to help help them relax as relaxation techniques and help them de-stress. But so many individuals will go back inside after having that cigarette and they say to themselves, wow, that cigarette took away all my stress. I feel so much better now. When really it was all those other things that they were doing that were helping take away their stress. And what they were doing by having the cigarette was just taking away their withdrawal symptoms to that drug addiction, that addiction to nicotine. So it's really important to know, I still tell people, go outside when you used to have that cigarette. Instead of standing like this, though, 10 times a day, 10 minutes each time, take a little light walk around the building, or around your neighborhood, or around your house, or around your block. That way you can still get your heart rate up a little bit, just like nicotine does, and you can help to ward off any decreased metabolism that initially might occur, and burn some more calories and feel good about yourself. So we can see, what I've been talking about is that it's a strong physical challenge, this physical addiction to nicotine, but it's also a behavioral challenge. And I'm gonna use Donna as an example because she'll let me pick on her because we work together. So Donna, can you share with the room, I'm going to get my calculator out because I'm not going to pretend like I can do this math in my head. Donna, can you share with the room how many years did you smoke cigarettes for?
44.
44 years, okay. So I'm going to take that 44 times 365 days in a year. So you smoked for approximately a little over 16,000 years. Or I'm sorry, 16,000 days, not years. Donna, over those 16,000 days that you smoked, how many cigarettes would you say on average did you smoke? I know maybe a little more on the weekends, a little less during the week, but how it shook out over those 16,000 days, how many cigarettes would you say that you had?
I was a pack-a-day smoker.
Pack-a-day smoker? Okay. So we'll take that number times 2. So Donna's looking at approximately a little over 321,000 cigarettes that she's had in her lifetime. So that's a tremendous amount. If you figure 10 puffs per cigarette, yes, we all know some are less, some are more. But you just add a 0 to that number, so she's looking at a little over 3 million puffs off a cigarette that she's had. So a little over 3 million times she's had that dopamine cascade that we were showing you about. She's self-dosed, she's free-based nicotine, a little over 3 million times. Now, many of those times, Donna was participating in different behaviors, whether it was driving, whether it was drinking coffee. Donna, is there something that you correlated closely with smoking cigarettes every time you did a behavior?
So my car didn't start unless I had the cigarette.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
That-
coffee. It has to be coffee break
Mhm.
and the cigarette.
Okay. And so there are a lot of times, you know, nicotine addiction is fascinating because you begin to pair it with all these different behaviors. You can't imagine doing the behavior without smoking the cigarette, without having that dopamine rush. But also there are different moods. You know, I remember when I was smoking, if I was feeling really great, I was having a lot of fun, I'd light up a cigarette and I told myself it added to the enjoyment of the situation. Maybe it made me feel more alive. And on the opposite side of that coin, if I was feeling bummed out about something or angry, I'd also light up a cigarette and I would tell myself it would help calm me down. Or I would tell myself it would comfort me if I was sad. And so it's a very fascinating addiction that we begin to pair with all these behaviors over time. And it's just like if I were to see, you know, a bunch of Twinkies on this table right now, I would begin to salivate because it's one of my favorite, you know, desserts, you know, especially if it was cheesecake. You know, I would begin to have that chemical reaction. The smokers have the same reaction. Many of you will know what I'm talking about because just that preparation time, but an addict before they get their fix. And so, you know, it's a very, very strong behavioral, you know, behavioral addiction also, as well as physical. And so both of these will need to be addressed in your quit process. Both the behavioral challenge and the physical challenge will need to be addressed. We're going to talk about that. Now, I just want to say very briefly, before you quit, you have to decide that you're ready to quit. You can't be here. You know, what I hope you're not here, the reason I hope you're not here is because someone else is making you be here, or you're trying to quit for your husband or your wife or your child or your parent. You know, you really have to put some skin in the game. You really have to be here because you want to quit. That is what it is. I'm not even going to go into that anymore. But you truly have to want to quit in order to quit. There's no magic bullet out there that's going to do all the work for you. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about preparing. So one of the ways that smoking cessation experts, including those at the Mayo Clinic, one of the ways they use to gauge just how ready someone is to quit is by giving them this card. And this is in your package. It's labeled A at the top. And if you can't find it in your packet, let me know. I'll help you find it, or you can look up here. There are two scales on this card. The first scale says, how important is it to you to quit smoking? The second one says, how confident are you that you can quit? With 0 being not at all important, not at all confident, and 10 being extremely important, extremely confident. Now, is there anyone in this room that might be able to do me a big favor and help me out with this talk? And if you are currently using tobacco, maybe throw out the numbers of where you're at on those two scales. Yes, sir.
I'd say I'm like a 6.
Okay.
It's pretty important that I do want to quit, but I'm probably like a 9 that I think I could quit eventually.
Okay. So you're very confident that you can quit, but it's not important to you that you can to quit.
That way, but
Okay.
that's why I'm here. I just want some self-awareness.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. You know, you do win some sort of prize because you're the first one, and probably over 100 times I've done this that had had higher confidence than importance. Because most people, if they're very, very confident that they can quit, the overwhelming majority of individuals I come across, it's very important for them to quit. But they've had so many failed quit attempts in the past that they're just not confident that they can do it in the future. But you know what I really encourage people to do, I think one of the best ways to get confidence up is to get more information, because I really believe that education is power. And I think that by being at the talk today and sitting through and listening to what the different treatments are for smoking cessation, sitting through and hearing me talk about the cards that we're going to and hearing how to create an individualized behavior modification plan for yourself, I think that's really going to get your confidence up. You are definitely a unique case, sir. So I'm going to try and find a way to get your importance up to quit. And I'm sure you know all about the health reasons, and you have others around you who have high expectations for you, and I'm sure you have maybe nieces or nephews or your own children who look up to you and you're a role model for. We all know parents who smoke have children who are significantly more likely to smoke. So those are all great reasons to quit too. But what I really want to point out to you is that both of these scales, before anyone does a major behavior change, both of these scales need to be elevated. Both of them need to be high. Because as you can imagine, if it's really important to you to quit, but you're just not confident that you can do it, then you're going to use the first slip up or that first cigarette that you have in a moment of weakness as a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to say to yourself, see, I knew I couldn't do it, and you're going to beat yourself down and you're not going to quit. So on the other side of that, if you're really confident that you can quit, but you just don't really care, it's just not important to you, then you're not going to really quit either, because it's not important to you. And we only do things, we only spend our time and energy doing things that are important to us. But if you do find yourself on the confidence scale being only about a 3 or a 4, one thing that's really important to do is not ask yourself why you're not a higher number, but to ask yourself why you're not a lower number, because then you'll be focusing on the positives. And if you ask yourself why you're a 3 or 4 and not a 9, you're only going to be focusing on the negatives. So focus on what positives you do have, whether it's in the importance category or the confidence category, and focus on those and build on those. So that's really important. Now again, if I do my job correctly during the next half hour and the previous 10, it's going to get you to think differently about quitting smoking and all the times before. How can you quit differently? First, we like to say, understand that it's not your fault. In the past, we truly did not comprehend what a true addiction nicotine was. We used to put it back on people's willpower and say, oh, they're just not strong-minded enough or this or that. People didn't have the right tools at their disposal. Even if someone was using a smoking cessation treatment, they might not have been using it appropriately. And so what I really want to encourage you to do is not beat yourself up for past quit attempts that didn't work. In fact, we're going to use those to your advantage. You're going to see when we're creating a behavior modification plan for yourself, we're going to use any past failed quit attempts to your advantage moving forward in the future. And that's really exciting to think about. Also, understand that you shouldn't go it alone. We always say, I know it's tempting the next time you go to quit smoking to not tell anybody else, because that way if you fail, maybe you'll think that the only person I'm going to disappoint is myself. But what we really encourage individuals to do is tell as many people as possible that they're quitting smoking, so that you are held accountable to as many other people as possible in your immediate environment. A couple other great things to do, great avenues of support, are the American Cancer Society, the American Lung Association. I'm not sure if maybe this hospital offers some smoking cessation classes, or your individual physician's office might offer something. Also, often the county that we're in, there may be grants available to the county that will have free materials, maybe help fund, subsidize some treatments that you might be prescribed. So it's very important to try and speak with your physician, speak with the American Cancer Society, American Lung Association, get as many different avenues of support around you. If there's someone in your office that you work with that you can go up to them and you can say, hey Bob, I'm quitting smoking this weekend. I want you to start coming up to me every single Monday and ask me if I've had a cigarette in the last 24 hours. And if I tell you no, I have not had a cigarette, I want you to give me a high five or slap me on the back and say, attaboy, great job. And if I had had a cigarette, I want you to talk to me about why I had it and what I can do to not have it if I'm in the same situation again. So get people around you that will fill you with positivity. It's very important. Hopefully there's someone that you have. But if there's not, there's something called the Get Quit Hotline. You see that down here. It's a hotline staffed with tobacco treatment specialists. It's open 6 a.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time. These people are great. I've met many of them when I was being trained at the Mayo Clinic as a tobacco treatment specialist. They're really great. You can call them at any time. They give you all kinds of great information. They send you emails every day to let you know how long it's been since you quit. And you don't have to wait to quit to start calling them. They'll send you emails every day that tell you how long it's been since you quit, how much money you've saved, what your body's doing at this time to get healthier. They'll call you every single day, actually. If you allow them, you'll find a time that works best for them or works best for you. They'll call you at that time. They'll say, hey, Jerry, this is Marge from the Get Quit Hotline. How's everything going? Have you had a cigarette? And if Jerry says, no, I haven't, Marge will say, great job. It's been 20 days for you, or 40, or 300 days for you. Your body's doing this, and you've saved this much money. Great job. We'll talk to you tomorrow. If Jerry says, yes, I did have a smoke, then Marge will say, okay, well, let's figure out what was going on so that you don't have a smoke again, the next time. It was just a slip up. Don't give up. Don't let that lapse turn into a relapse. And we're going to talk a little bit about that stuff later. There have been several guys I've come across who didn't want to have anything to do with talking to anyone that they knew personally about their quitting smoking habit, but they loved the idea of talking to a stranger on the phone. They became very close with a stranger that they had on the phone. And every day when that phone would ring about 6 p.m., I've had guys that tell me they literally would be running to their phone, they're knocking over a baby carriage, knocking over an old lady, and getting to their phone because it was such reinforcement, to them. They would look forward to that phone call all day just to be able to say, no, I have not had a cigarette. So I really encourage everyone to at a minimum, call the Get Quit Hotline when you're thinking about quitting smoking. And by coming to this talk today and signing in, you have free access to the hotline. So I think that's one of the best things that can come out of coming to this talk is being set up with that resource. So now I know I've talked to you about preparing. I'm going to talk a lot more about preparing for your quit attempt. And there are several different stages. There's the before stage. So you're going to do about 90% of your work for your next quit attempt before you ever quit. There's the before stage. There's the on your actual quit date stage that we're going to plan for, prepare for. And finally, there's the after. But 90% of your work is going to be done before you ever quit. And we're going to start talking about that now. So first you want to choose a quit date, the day that you're actually going to quit. And I encourage you to have that day about a week and a half away. And this is when you decide that you're ready to quit. Then pick a day that's about a week and a half away. Because I'm going to be asking you to work through these cards at that time. And it's going to need to be only a week and a half away and not longer, because if you make it longer away, a couple months away, you'll just keep pushing it off and keep pushing it off. But if you make it a week and a half away, then it'll be tangible, you'll know it's coming, and you'll be making these changes to your environment and doing the other things I'll be asking you to do. You'll be doing them a lot, taking that a lot more seriously. Don't pick a day that conflicts with major life events. You don't want to set yourself up for disappointment. You want to set yourself up for success. I think those are really the most important things is you pick a day that kind of will minimize your stressors. And I've often people will come to me and say, Kev, every day is stressful for me. When am I supposed to pick a quit date? I say that's a great conversation